Deep in the Amazon, the Surui tribe holds an ancient, very distinct DNA. We claim that their DNA tells in detail and proves the peopling of the whole world with modern humans. Their DNA proves the routes of migration of all modern humans departing from South America and spreading to the whole world. In other words, it proves the out of Africa theory wrong. Further, it proves any consensus Beringia standstill and crossing wrong. It also proves consensus Neanderthal interbreeding wrong, and to be complete, it also proves any out of Asia wrong. That same ancient Surui DNA appears in consumer DNA tests of modern humans across the world, including in Europe. According to estimates, this ancient Surui DNA is present and detectable in millions of modern humans. For those that try to ascertain human history, the above fact should get plenty of attention, especially since it is global and across all modern humans. Even while it is ancient, the involved maternal DNA visually appears globally in heat maps. Also, the involved paternal DNA visually appears globally in frequency maps, even so in Europe. Nothing similar is the case with any sub-Saharan tribe or group. All above makes the scientific consensus doubtful at best, and this twice even in the first glance. So, the distinct Amazon forest Native American Surui DNA in a smaller proportion is held by ancient indigenous groups on the opposite west side of the Pacific Ocean. In New Guinea and Australia, but also as far west as the Indian Andaman Islands. As said, and despite the above evidence, together consensus scientists prefer to call them population Y. While all points to the Surui and the Amazon forest as its origin, nobody even considers them as the ancestor. Obviously, this is highly unscientific and, by preventing human beings from understanding their history and the potential benefits it offers, a very irresponsible approach. The mysterious and ancient group, population Y, was first found and recognized in a 2015 study. Because of its utmost importance, we stress that while especially the Surui lived in total isolation of the world until some 60 years ago, they very faintly but enigmatically appear in the DNA of potentially millions of modern humans across the world. We claim that the Surui, like other Native American groups, were hiding and migrating to evade foreigners and more particularly the European colonists, this at least since the year 1500. So, it should be clear that in the scientific consensus human history, this Surui and population-wide DNA presence in the whole world is absolutely impossible, yet it is a fact that it inconveniently pops up in studies and individual DNA across the whole world. Particular is that its appearance is linked to the major ocean gyres, which is a kind of a proof they spread across all continents and from some early point in time also by means of transoceanic navigation. Obviously such transoceanic navigation must have been quite advanced, and in the absence of compass, by means of constellation navigation, just like the Polynesians provingly systematically used until modern times. It is clear that the migration of this DNA had been across the Pacific Ocean and seas to the west of it, from the Americas to the west as far as India. Obviously such transoceanic navigation must have been quite advanced, and in the absence of compass, by means of constellation navigation, just like the Polynesians provingly systematically used until modern times. We claim that these groups migrated from the Americas to Africa surfing the Atlantic current systems. Provingly knowing that the general direction is west across the Pacific, it is safer and more complete to say it is expanding or spreading out from South America. Just by analyzing the haplogroups, we clearly recognize the real and proven and rewritten human history. Along the westward spreading across the Pacific Ocean, and extended by the Austronesian expansion, the original maternal haplogroup of the Amazon forest Surui literally evolves or ages from the Native American group D, to following up groups like the Asian maternal haplogroup E, this all the way across all maternal groups, as far as to and beyond maternal haplogroup M, which by the way covers the whole world, including ancient places and sites, as Göbekli Tepe, Nesha Ramla, the Pontic Steppes, and even as far west and north as the cultural region and homeland of the Sami people. The Surui DNA also covers the regions and countries where the early European farmers trace their primary regional origin to Anatolia, part of modern-day Turkey, the Aegean, and the broader Fertile Crescent of Southwest Asia. In other words, Surui DNA as well as population Y, both of Amazon forest Native American origin, rewrites all of the early human history in a very clear, convenient nutshell? All that is needed is not to negate the abundant facts. If you want to see the whole rewritten and proven human history in a nutshell, please go on assisting this video to literally see the real human odyssey. The Guinea Surui DNA is carried by ancient indigenous Guinea people that are called Papuans, and that provingly carry the maternal Haplogroups groups M. Papuans carry some of the highest percentage of Denisovan DNA of any living population on Earth, ranging between 3% to 5% of their total genome. While certain indigenous Amazonian groups like the Surui possess a unique and fascinating genetic link to ancient Australasian lineages, often referred to as population Y, their total genome-wide Denisovan DNA is actually less high than Papuans. It is still typically averaging just under 0.2%. The fact that the Surui DNA covers all the above regions and countries and delivers Denisovan and later Neanderthal DNA is one of many of the most relevant, but systematically negated proofs that the Native Americans are the real ancestors of the whole population Y, as well as of the later associated maternal M, and consequently of all modern humans. So there is a clear link between the Surui maternal D and Papuan maternal M, that was spread out departing from the Amazon forest in South America? There is no such link with maternal M anywhere in sub-Saharan Africa. So we are well underway to clearly proving American origin and at the same time disproving African origin. Mitochondrial macrohaplogroup L3 matured in Asia, rather than Africa. This rests on matching coalescence ages 71,000 years ago, for Eurasian, MN, and African L3 lineages, the presence of the oldest M and N clades in Southeast Asia, and parallel splits in Y chromosomal D. On your screen, you see the early arrival of maternal Surui DNA in Asia, but very specifically in China. As you see on your screen, this has nothing to do with sub-Saharan Africa. Maternal Amazon group M, and its maternal Amazon ancestor group D, are deep ancient lineages in China, originating during the Upper Paleolithic, with Amazon maternal M dating back roughly 50,000 years, as a consequence of major sublineages of haplogroup D emerging long time before. In sequence, these Native American D and M lineages trace the earliest major prehistoric human expansions across East Asia. Some scientific consensus proponents wrongly suggest an early out-of-Africa migration of maternal group M at 125,000 years ago, followed by an also wrongly supposed back migration to Africa around 70,000 years. But as you see on your screen, there never was a significant presence of maternal M in sub-Saharan Africa, simply because it originated as maternal D in South and next North America, and had been mainly delivered to Asia, and not to sub-Saharan Africa. Very differently than consensus. At this point we are juggling with several ancient elements, the maternal groups L and M, Denisovans, and the split in paternal haplogroup D. Paternal D does matter a lot in this context, because it gives rise to the paternal haplogroup E, which is the dominant group in Africa, and consequently defines modern humans in Africa today. Y-DNA haplogroup E is the most widespread and dominant paternal lineage across the African continent, and it is wrongly assumed to be the result of a regional split into major regional branches. This while it in fact are several waves of haplogroup E, arriving on the African facades, this from the west as also from the east. Very differently than us, consensus, at this point is not considering that all these ancient elements, like the fact that all these maternal groups L and M, Denisovans and the wrongly supposed split in paternal haplogroup DE, are in fact nothing else than independent waves arriving from the Americas. Obviously this further builds up disapproval of African origin, and the approval of American origin. All these ancient elements are linked to Surui, and provingly descending from Surui, which we will do in this and other videos. As a sidekick, we like to describe Neanderthals as by modern humans introgressed Denisovans, pointing out that Denisovans came well before Neanderthals. On the paternal side, we clearly see the maturation from group Q into MS. When seen together, the link between Native Americans and the rest of the world becomes stronger and the Australian Q gap is filled. Another group of population Y are the Ami people, which are an indigenous Austronesian group of Taiwan. On the paternal side, we now clearly see the maturation from group Q also into O. When seen together, the link between Native Americans and the rest of the world becomes stronger, and the Australian and the Southeast Asian Q gaps are now filled with paternal MS and O. In other videos we will provide genetic and mathematical evidence of the Native American origin of all major haplogroups in the world, including paternal haplogroup R1b and R1a. Paternal haplogroup O is the dominant paternal lineage in East and Southeast Asia, comprising over a quarter of all males globally, but it is not the dominant group across the entire world. Global distribution of major paternal HaPLO groups. O is prevalent across China, Japan, Korea, and Southeast Asia, driven by historical agricultural expansions. R is dominant in Western Europe, R1b, and parts of South/Eastern Asia, R1a. E is most common across sub-Saharan Africa. Q is prevalent among indigenous populations of the Americas, which is the origin subject of this video, and which we claim and prove to be the ancestor of all these dominant paternal groups, and in fact of all modern humans. To arrive in Taiwan from the Amazon forest in South America, just as in the case of Australia, the Pacific needs to be crossed to the west, which is in practice surfing the westward Pacific current system. This was exactly what Thor Heyerdahl did to prove the viability of indigenous myths that claim that Polynesians descended from South America. Thor Heyerdahl's goal was to demonstrate that transoceanic drift voyages from South America to Polynesia were physically possible using primitive pre-Columbian technology. This while the consensus and modern mainstream anthropology and genetic studies claim that Polynesians actually originated from Southeast Asia, Austronesian expansion, not from South America. Modern twists. Genetic data has since shown minor prehistoric contact, indicating that Polynesians may have traveled to South America and back rather than the other way around. The Ami people, again, are a direct descendants of the origin population Y, maternal group D, plus the paternal group Q. As a consequence, or rather in fact, the genetic haplogroups of the Ami people, an indigenous Austronesian group of Taiwan, primarily feature on the paternal side lineages belonging to haplogroup O, and the maternal side lineages belonging to haplogroup N, M, and D. The Ami people on a world or continental map would be rather invisible, but we claim they were the ancestors of the actual groups that do become visible on world or continental maps. We show on your screen how their maternal haplogroup M at a later point in time adds up to haplogroup D. The Papuans also are a direct descendant of the origin population Y, maternal haplogroup D, plus the paternal haplogroup Q. As a consequence, or rather in fact, the genetic haplogroups of the Papuans, an indigenous Austronesian group of Guinea, primarily feature on the paternal side lineages belonging to haplogroup MS and K, and on the maternal side lineages belonging to haplogroup M, P and Q variants. The Ami people on a world or continental map would be rather invisible, but we claim they were the ancestors of the actual groups that do become visible on world or continental maps. We show on your screen how maternal haplogroup M teams up with haplogroup D. We show on your screen how paternal haplogroup MS teams up with haplogroup Q. For now we only presented two cases, one in East Asia and one in Oceania, but we have the same information of all population Y and consequently Amazon forest Native American related groups and individuals further to the west, but rather across all ocean current systems in the world, including in Central and North America, but also in Africa and Europe,